Fourth graders, we are into the best part of the book right now, so I just wanted to catch you up. I'm starting on chapter 11, is where I think you probably left off. We know that Gregor's father possibly might be in Regalia, and we know that because of the keychain that Vicus had found. The rats reached him first before the Underlanders did, and the rats are keeping him alive because they are intrigued by his science mind. They want a thumb. Rats want him to make them a thumb because then they can do all of these things. They can create weapons, they can open doors, they can make tools, all of those fun things. We know that Lux's parents also met his dad, and we know that the rats, if you get in a battle with the rats, you have to fight or you're going to be killed. I'm not sure if you heard about the prophecy, so I'm going to read that prophecy to you right now. It starts with, "Beware, Underlanders, time hangs by a thread. The hunters are hunted. White water runs red. The gnawers will strike to extinguish the rest. The hope of the hopeless resides in a quest. An overland warrior, a son of the sun, may bring us back light, he may bring us back none. But gather your neighbors and follow his call, or rats will most surely devour us all. To over, to under, of royal descent. Two flyers, two crawlers, two spinners ascent. One gnawer beside and one lost up ahead, and 8 will be left when we count up the dead. The last who will die must decide where he stands. The fate of the 8 is contained in his hands. So bid him take care, bid him look where he leaps, as life may be death, and death life again reaps." We are on chapter 11. They think the prophecy names Gregor as the warrior, which most people in the Underland are probably not super happy, especially Luxa. She doesn't really like that. Chapter 11. Gregor awoke from a fitful sleep. Images of blood-red rivers, his dad surrounded by rats, and Boots falling into a bottomless cavern had woven in and out of dreams all night long. Oh yeah, and then there was that warrior thing. He had tried to tell them. When Vicus had implied that he was the warrior in the prophecy of Grey, Gregor had actually laughed out loud, but the man was serious. "Gregor, you've got the wrong guy," Gregor had said. "Really, I promise I'm not a warrior." Why pretend and get their hopes up? Samurai warriors, Apache warriors, African warriors, medieval warriors. He'd seen movies. He'd read books. He didn't in any way resemble a warrior. First of all, they were grown up, and they usually had a lot of special weaponry. Gregor was 11, unless you counted a 2-year-old as special weaponry. He had come empty-handed. Also, Gregor was not into fighting. He'd fight back if someone jumped at him at school, but that didn't happen very often. He wasn't all that big, but he moved fast and people didn't like to mess with him. Sometimes he would step in if a bunch of guys were pounding on a small kid, and he hated seeing that. But he never picked fights, and wasn't fighting what warriors mainly did. Vicus and Luxa had listened to his protest. He thought he might have convinced Luxa. She didn't have a very high opinion of him. Anyway, but Vicus was more persistent. "How many overlanders survived the fall to the Underland, do you suppose?" "I would guess maybe 1/10. Ooh, math term. "And how many survived the rats after that?" "Well, perhaps another 10th. So out of 1,000 overlanders, let us just say 10 survive. How passing it strange is that not only your father, but you and your sister came alive to us," said Vicus. "I guess that is kind of strange," admitted Gregor. "But I don't see why this makes me a warrior." "You will understand when you better understand the prophecy," said Vicus. "Each person carries their own destiny. These walls tell of our destiny, and your destiny, Gregor, requires you to play a role in it." "I don't know about this destiny thing," said Gregor. "I mean, my dad and Boots and I, we all had the same laundry room, and we landed somewhere pretty close to you, so I'm thinking it's more of a coincidence. I'd like to help, but you guys are probably going to have to wait a little longer for your warrior." Vicus just smiled and said they would put it in before the council in the morning. This morning. Now. Despite all of his worries, and he had plenty, Gregor couldn't deny a feeling of giddy happiness that shot through him periodically. His dad was alive! Almost instantly, another wave of anxiety would rush over him and say, yeah, he's alive, but he's imprisoned by rats. Still, his grandma always said, where there's life, there is hope. Boy, wouldn't his grandma love it if she knew he was talked about in a prophecy? But of course, that wasn't him. That was some warrior guy who would help, hopefully, make an appearance really, really soon and help him get his dad free. That was his main goal now. How could he rescue his dad? The curtain pulled open, and Gregor squinted at the light. Meredith stood in the doorway. The swelling in his face had gone down, but his bruises were going to be there for a while. Gregor wondered if the guard was still angry with him, but Meredith sounded calm. Gregor the Overlander, the council requests your presence, he said. If you make haste, go hurry, you may wash and eat first. Okay, said Gregor. He started to rise and realized that Boots' head was cradled on his arm. What about Boots? He asked. She may sleep on, said Meredith. Dulcet will watch over her. Gregor bathed quickly and dressed in fresh clothes. Meredith led him to a small room where a meal was laid out and then stood watch at the door. Hey, Meredith, he asked. How's everybody? I mean, how is Perdita and the bats? Are they okay? Perdita has finally awoken. The bats will mend, said Meredith evenly. Oh, that's great, said Gregor with relief. After his father's situation, the thing pressing most on him had been the condition of the Underlanders. He wolfed down some bread, butter, and a mushroom omelet. He drank some hot tea, and the energy seemed to pour through him. Are you ready to face the council? Asked Meredith. All set, said Gregor, springing up. He felt better than he had since he had reached the Underland. News of his dad, the Underlanders' recovery, sleep, and food had really revived him. The council, a group of dozen older Underlanders, had gathered at a round table in a room off the high hall. Gregor saw Vicus and Solovit, who gave him an encouraging smile. Luxa was also there, looking tired and defiant. Gregor bet she'd been chewed out for going to the rescue party last night. He was sure she hadn't acted one bit sorry. Vicus introduced the people around the table. They all had funny-sounding names that Gregor immediately forgot. The council began to ask him some questions, all kinds of things, like when he was born, and did he know how to swim, and what did he do in the Underland. He couldn't figure out why a lot of this stuff was important. Did it really matter that his favorite color was green? But a couple of the Underlanders were scribbling down everything like it was golden. After a while, the council seemed to forget he was there, and they argued among themselves. He caught phrases like, son of the sun, S-O-N of the S-U-N, and white water runs red. And he knew they were immediately talking about the prophecy and him. Excuse me, he finally broke in. I guess Vicus didn't tell you, but I'm not the warrior. Look, please, really, what I need from you guys is to help me bring my dad home. Everyone at the table stared at him for a moment, and then they began to talk with greater excitement. Now he kept hearing the words, follow his call, follow his call. Finally, Vicus rapped on the table for order. Members of the council, we must decide. Here sits Gregor the Overlander. Who counts him as the warrior of the prophecy of Grey? 10 of the 12 hands raised their hands. Luxa kept her hand on the table. Either she didn't think he was the warrior or she wasn't allowed to vote. Probably both. We believe you to be the warrior, said Vicus. If you call us to help you regain your father, then we answer your call. Oh, they were going to help him. Who cared why? Okay, great, said Gregor. Whatever it takes. I mean, believe whatever you want. That's fine. We must begin the journey with haste, said Vicus. Quick. I'm ready, said Gregor eagerly. Let me just get Boots and we can go. Ah, yes, the baby, said Solovit. And another round of arguments ensued. Wait, shouted Vicus. This costs much time. Gregor, We do not know that the prophecy includes your sister. What? Said Gregor. He couldn't remember the prophecy very well. He had to ask Vicus if he could get in the room and read it again. The prophecy mentions 12 beings, and only 2 are described as overlanders, and you and your father would fill that number, said Solovet. The prophecy also speaks of 1 lost. That may be your father, in which case Boots would be the 2nd overlander, but it also might be a rat, said Vicus. The journey will be difficult. The prophecy warns that 4 of the 12 will lose life. It may be wisest to leave Boots here. From around the table came a general murmur of agreement. Gregor's head began to swim. Leave Boots? Leave her here in Regalia with all the Underlanders? He couldn't do that. It wasn't that he thought they would mistreat her, but she'd be so lonely. And what if he and his dad didn't make it back? She'd never get home. Still, he knew how vicious the rats were, and they would be hunting him to the last rat. He didn't know what to do. He looked at the set of faces and thought the Underlanders had already decided to split them up. Stay together. Stay together. I'm sure you've heard your mom and dad say that if you have a sibling. Stay together. Wasn't that what his mom always told him when he took his sisters out? Stay together. Then he noticed Lexa was avoiding his gaze. She had intertwined her fingers on the stone table before her and was staring at them tensely. What would you do if it was your sister, Lexa? He asked. The room got very quiet. He could tell the council didn't want to hear her opinion. I have no sister, Overlander, said Lexa. Gregor felt disappointed. He heard a murmur of approval from some of the council members. Lexa's eyes flashed around the table and she scowled. But if I did have a sister, and I were you, she said passionately, I would never take my eyes off of her. He said, thank you, but he didn't think she could hear him in the loud round of objections that were pouring from the council. He raised his voice. If Boots doesn't go, I don't go. The room was in an uproar when a bat veered through the doorway and crashed onto the table, silencing everyone. A ghostly woman slumped over the bat, pressing her hand to her chest to stop the flow of blood. One of the bat's wings folded in, but the other one extended at an awkward angle, clearly broken. Anshel is dead. Daphne is dead. The rats found, shed, Fangor. King Gorger has launched his armies. King Gorger is the boss of the rats. They come for us, gasped the woman. Vicus caught the woman as she collapsed. How many, Kita? How many? Asked Vicus. Many, she whispered. Many rats. And she went limp. That is the end of chapter 11.